Ladies and gentlemen, what if I told you that the love of your life could already be in your world right now? Sitting a few feet away from you at work, passing you on the street, or even hidden behind a casual friendship you've never thought twice about. See, when God writes your love story, He doesn't always send lightning bolts and butterflies. Sometimes He moves in quiet, unassuming moments that feel ordinary on the surface, but are life-changing in disguise. And the reason you don't realize it yet, because He's not just introducing you to a person, He's introducing you to purpose, growth, and a partnership designed to last beyond the feelings. Before God brings the right person into your life, He brings the right version of you to the table. And that's the part most people skip over. Everyone wants the love story, but not everyone is willing to become the kind of person that love story requires. God doesn't just match people based on attraction. He matches people based on assignment, on purpose, on mission, on destiny. That means before your paths align, your purpose has to align. See, the mistake many people make is thinking they'll figure it out together once they meet the right one. But if you're lost and they're lost, all you've got is two lost people trying to lead each other, and that's a recipe for disaster. God knows this. That's why, before He lets you meet, He'll put you through seasons where you have to learn discipline. He'll test your patience. He'll force you to confront your insecurities and face the habits that keep you from becoming your best self. Some of you might think that delay means He's forgotten you. But let me tell you, there's nothing delayed about divine timing. You're not being held back. You're being prepared. Think about it, a surgeon doesn't hand someone a scalpel without years of preparation. An architect doesn't hand over blueprints without making sure the foundation is right. And God doesn't hand you a soulmate until you're ready to build something together, not just feel something together. When your purpose is clear, you don't approach love with desperation. You approach it with direction. You start asking the right questions. Can we walk in the same vision? Can we build together? Can we grow in the same soil? And because you've been through the refining process, you'll have the strength to say no to people who don't fit, even if they look right on the outside. Purpose alignment is not romantic. It's work. It's you grinding when you'd rather be relaxing. It's you praying when you'd rather be scrolling. It's you saying no to temptation because you know there's something bigger ahead. And yes, it's lonely sometimes. There will be nights you question if you're wasting your time. But that's when you have to remember, you're not just preparing for a person, you're preparing for a partnership that will carry weight. The weight of your dreams, your responsibilities, your family's future. Now here's the hard part. While God is preparing you, He's also preparing them. And you have no control over their process. You can't rush them. You can't force them. And sometimes the wait isn't about you needing more time. It's about them needing more time. That's why patience isn't just a virtue in love. It's a requirement. If you try to grab something before it's ready, you'll end up with something half-baked, and half-baked love can't last the storms of life. Purpose alignment means you're both rooted before you're connected. Because if you're not rooted, when the winds of misunderstanding or hardship blow, you'll be ripped out of each other's lives just as quickly as you were planted there. God wants your roots deep, so deep that when your soulmate comes along, you don't lose your identity in them, and they don't lose theirs in you. Instead, you stand side by side, strong, knowing who you are and where you're going. And then comes the second way God introduces you, through life's crossroads. Now, this one can catch you off guard because it rarely feels like a setup. In fact, it often comes during a season when you're distracted by change. Maybe you just moved to a new city. Maybe you switched jobs. Maybe you've been through a breakup, a financial setback, or even a personal reinvention. It's in these moments of transition that God does some of His most divine matchmaking. Why? Because crossroads humble you. They break patterns. They put you in rooms and spaces you never imagined being in. They make you bump into people you never thought you'd meet. And they strip away the masks we often wear in our comfort zones. When you're at a crossroads, you're more open to connection because you're already adjusting to newness. But here's the thing. Sometimes at a crossroads, you won't even realize the significance of who you've met. You might think it's just a friendly introduction, a co-worker, a neighbor, or someone you happen to run into at an event. But later, looking back, you'll see how perfectly orchestrated it was. You'll realize that if you had taken a different turn, if you had stayed in that old job, if you had ignored that small urge to attend that gathering, you never would have met. God's timing in crossroads is surgical. He doesn't just bring you together when you're both available. He brings you together when you're both ready to notice. See, you can cross paths with someone multiple times in life, but until you're both in a place to recognize what's in front of you, it won't click. That's why some love stories start years after the first meeting. The first time you meet, you're not in position yet. The second time you are. Transitions are uncomfortable, but they're also revealing. They show you who's there for you when you're not at your best. They show you who makes space for you when you're busy trying to figure life out. And sometimes, in those vulnerable, messy moments, God slips in the person who will walk with you through every other crossroad you'll face. I'll tell you something else about crossroads. They test your willingness to be present. You can be so focused on the future, so obsessed with where you're going, that you miss the blessing right in front of you. Some of you are so busy praying for your soulmate that you're not even paying attention to the people you're meeting right now. The ones who make you laugh in a hard week. The ones who share values without making a show of it. The ones who see you, not just your highlight reel. When God brings someone into your life at a crossroads, He often packages them in reality, not fantasy. They may not look like what you expected. They may not be your type. They may even come with their own battles they're fighting, but something in your spirit will feel at ease around them. Something in you will say, I can be myself here. And that peace is worth more than any checklist you've been holding on to. Purpose alignment and divine crossroads. They're not glamorous in the moment. They feel ordinary, sometimes even inconvenient. But that's the beauty of God's introductions. They're so natural, you don't realize you've stepped into the most important chapter of your life until the page has already turned. Sometimes God introduces your soulmate through the fire. Not the kind that burns you down, but the kind that purifies you. And when you're going through a storm, you're not exactly scanning the horizon for romance. You're just trying to make it through the day. But that's exactly where God works best. Because shared struggles have a way of connecting people beyond the surface. When you've been in the valley with someone, when you've both had to fight to climb out, the bond that forms there is built on something deeper than attraction. It's built on understanding. There's a level of intimacy that only comes from walking through pain together. I'm not talking about toxic trauma bonds where two broken people cling to each other to avoid healing. I'm talking about seeing someone's character under pressure. Seeing how they respond when life takes away comfort. Watching them keep their word when it costs them something. When you meet someone in the middle of hardship, you see the unpolished, unfiltered version of them, and they see you. And that kind of honesty is rare. Sometimes God will allow your paths to cross in the middle of your battles because He knows that you'll value each other differently. You won't take the good seasons for granted because you remember what it felt like to struggle side by side. You'll appreciate the quiet, peaceful days because you know what chaos felt like, and that appreciation becomes a glue that keeps the relationship grounded, even when the next storm comes. And don't get it twisted. Shared struggle doesn't always mean you've been through the exact same thing. It can mean you both know what it's like to sacrifice. You both know what it's like to keep going when you're tired. You both know what it's like to dream bigger than your current situation. That shared language of perseverance makes you feel like you've known each other far longer than you have. Some of you might already have that person in your life without even realizing it. Someone who checked on you when you were quiet. Someone who encouraged you when you were doubting yourself. Someone who saw the cracks in your confidence and decided to stand with you instead of walking away. And maybe right now you see them as just a friend, just a co-worker, just someone who was kind to you in a difficult time. But what if that was the first brick in something God's been building quietly? What if that moment of kindness was His way of saying, pay attention? The problem is, many people overlook these divine introductions because they're looking for the movie scene. They think the soulmate will arrive in a perfect moment, when life is stable, their career is booming, their body is in shape, their faith is strong. But sometimes the introduction comes when you're tired, unsure, maybe even a little broken. Because that's when the connection isn't about impressing. It's about being real. And here's where the next way God works comes in. Unplanned, unforced connections. In a world obsessed with chasing, swiping, strategizing, and trying to control every outcome, there's something undeniably powerful about the connections that just happen. No agenda, no pressure, no trying to make it into something before it's ready. You've seen it before. You meet someone, you're not thinking about romance at all, but the conversation flows easily. There's no awkward effort to impress. You're not performing. They're not performing. It's just natural. That's how God often sets things in motion. He lets you connect in spaces where you're too busy being yourself to wear a mask. Unforced connections are a sign that you're operating in alignment, not manipulation. Because when you're trying to force something, you're constantly measuring, testing, wondering, do they like me? Did I say the right thing? Did I move too fast? But when God is in it, you're not anxiously calculating. You're present. You're curious. You're at peace. And that peace is the evidence of His hand. One of the reasons He uses this method is because He knows human nature. If you knew ahead of time, this person is your soulmate, your behavior would change. You might try too hard. You might start to bend yourself into a shape you think they want instead of showing who you truly are. So He hides it. He lets the bond form naturally through conversations, shared laughter, and everyday moments. And before you know it, you're looking at them one day thinking, when did you become so important to me? That's the beauty of divine connections. They sneak up on you. They grow roots before you even notice there's a tree. And by the time you do notice, you realize the foundation is already strong. You didn't have to script it. You didn't have to manipulate it. And you didn't have to beg for it to work. It just worked. Now, unforced doesn't mean effortless. Relationships still take intentionality, communication, and sometimes hard conversations. But there's a difference between working on something and working for something. When you're constantly chasing, proving, and striving to keep someone interested, that's not love. That's labor with no rest. But when God is in it, the work is mutual, the interest is mutual, the investment is mutual. And let me tell you why these unplanned connections are so important. They bypass your checklist. Your checklist is built from your limited perspective. It's shaped by what you think you want, based on what you've seen or experienced. But God's plan for your life is bigger than your list. That's why the one He sends may not check all your boxes, but they'll check your spirit. They'll bring peace where you used to feel pressure. They'll bring stability where you used to feel uncertainty. They'll make you feel safe being fully known. So don't be so quick to dismiss people who don't enter your life in the way you imagined. That stranger who made you laugh on a hard day, that person you met in passing who seemed to just get you, that friend who's been consistently showing up without asking for anything in return. Don't overlook those moments, because God often plants the biggest blessings in the smallest seeds, and He's not in a hurry for you to figure it out. When you think about it, both shared struggles and unforced connections have something in common. They strip away the superficial. They leave you with the truth of who a person really is and who you are with them. And that truth is the soil where love meant to last can grow. There's another thing God does that a lot of people overlook. He'll give you spiritual confirmation long before you get the emotional rush. We live in a time where people chase feelings like they're the truth. But feelings are like the wind. They can change direction in an instant. You can feel butterflies for the wrong person and feel nothing for the right one at first. That's why God doesn't want you to rely only on emotion when it comes to recognizing your soulmate. He wants you to be led by peace. Peace is quiet, but it's powerful. It doesn't shout. It doesn't demand attention. It just settles over you like a calm in the middle of chaos. And when God is connecting you to someone He's chosen for you, there's a stillness in your spirit that says, this is safe. This is solid. This is right. You might not even be able to explain it because it's not always logical. On paper, they might not look like your type. Your friends might not understand why you feel drawn to them. But your spirit knows. That's why it's dangerous to chase adrenaline instead of alignment. Adrenaline comes from unpredictability, from the drama, from the highs and lows. But alignment comes from two people who know who they are, where they're going, and how they fit into each other's lives. You don't need a relationship that keeps you guessing. You need one that keeps you growing. And spiritual confirmation doesn't mean there won't be questions. It doesn't mean everything will be perfect from day one. It means that deep down, beneath the noise, there's a conviction that you're where you're supposed to be. You'll find yourself praying for them without being asked. You'll feel a sense of responsibility for their well-being that isn't rooted in control, but in care. You'll notice that when you think about the future, you can actually see them there without having to force the image. Here's what most people miss. You have to train yourself to hear that confirmation. And the only way you do that is by staying close to God. Because if you're not in tune with Him, your desires can drown out His direction. You'll end up mistaking chemistry for calling, attraction for assignment. That's why sometimes He'll keep you single longer than you planned. Not because He's punishing you, but because He's fine-tuning your discernment. When that discernment is sharp, you won't be fooled by appearances. You won't be impressed by empty words. You won't fall for someone's potential if their patterns don't match it. And you'll know the difference between a seasonal person and a lifetime partner because the Spirit will confirm what the eyes can't always see. Then there's the last way God works, gradual revelation. This one is a game changer because it flips the whole love at first sight idea upside down. Sometimes your soulmate is already in your circle. They could be a friend, a colleague, someone you've known for years. And the reason you haven't seen them in that way yet is because God hasn't let you. Think about that. He can literally keep your eyes closed until the right time. Because if you saw it too soon, you might mishandle it. You might take them for granted. You might not be ready to receive the kind of love they carry. So He lets the relationship build naturally without the pressure of romance. You laugh together, you share advice, you see each other's flaws, you watch each other grow. And slowly, almost without realizing it, your heart starts to shift. It's a strange thing, waking up one day and realizing someone you've known for years suddenly feels different. Their presence feels lighter but deeper. You catch yourself thinking about them when they're not around. You remember small things they said that hit you in ways they didn't before. That's not just coincidence. That's God taking the blinders off. And here's the beauty of gradual revelation. By the time you realize what you already have trust. You already have respect. You already have history. You're not building from zero. You're building from a foundation that's been forming in the background. But there's a challenge here too. You have to be paying attention. If you keep your mind so locked on a certain type or a certain timeline, you might completely overlook what God is trying to show you. You might write someone off because you've boxed them into a role they played in the past. That's why humility is so important in love. You have to be willing to let God change your perspective. Gradual revelation also teaches patience. Because even after you realize what's in front of you, it doesn't mean it's time to act on it immediately. Sometimes He'll reveal it to you first so you can start praying for them in a new way. So you can start seeing them through the lens of purpose. not just preference. And in that space, he'll also be working on their heart, preparing them to see you differently too. The truth is, some of the strongest love stories are not the ones that started with sparks. They're the ones that started with seeds. Seeds planted in trust, watered in friendship, and grown in God's timing. By the time love blooms, it's not a surprise. It's the natural result of something that's been cared for all along. And when you finally step into it, you'll understand why it took so long. You'll see how every delay, every closed door, every season of preparation was part of making sure you both could carry what you were about to receive. Because this isn't about finding someone who just makes you happy. It's about finding someone who makes you better and being that for them too.